so we've got Tzvi on from Baxus. Baxus is tokenizing whiskey or liquid gold, as you want to say it.
Yep.
Yeah, and you guys have been live for, what is it, 2 years now?
No, so the full marketplace with like the full-on user experience is about 2 years.
Yeah.
But we started building and kind of did our first test transactions and everything back in 2021.
Oh, awesome.
So we've been at, this is, I missed last year, but this would have been my 5th breakpoint.
Wow.
Yeah.
As OG as it gets.
Yeah, we've been here for a while.
Yeah, as opposed to me, this is my first breakpoint.
That's great. You chose a good one to start with.
Yeah, I did. I haven't made it because I had a couple kids in the last couple of years. Makes it tough, which I believe you just recently had a kid, so congratulations in order.
Thank you. Yeah, no, shout out to my wife who let me be here.
Yes, big shout out to the missus. Yes.
Yeah, she's, but yeah, and last year the reason I missed this because I had a kid last year also, so that's why, so it was like, all right, 2 years in a row is a little much, but she bless her.
Yeah, I'm in California, so it's a long way, so I'm sure that you've traveled a long way as well.
Yeah. But I'm catching the first flight out. That was that was exactly the 2 a.m. flight out of Abu Dhabi tomorrow night. So that was the deal. Yeah.
Sounds good. How's Breakpoint been treating you so far?
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Again, I wasn't at last year, so I can't speak to it. I heard good things, but having been to the other ones, Amsterdam, the 2 ones in Lisbon, this was terrific. Like this was like the energy, the quality of the builders, the teams. I think that's like a point also is like the teams that are still here, the Lindy effect, like they're going to be here for a long time. Like they've clearly weathered up and down cycles. Like they're prepared for whether it gets better or worse. Like if I feel like they feel prepared, I mean, we most certainly are and have like growth despite everything going on in the crypto market, which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And even the new teams, like the primitives they're working on, like they benefit from all of the infrastructure that's been built out versus, when we first in 2021 started talking about Baxus and we're telling these, users and investors of like the idea and like they literally could not wrap their heads around it. They're like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
And now it's like, oh, we'll get thrown out in conversation like among teams that have been here that everyone knows that are like doing billions of dollars of transaction volume. So it's really cool to like even just see how we've continued to develop and advance that way.
Yeah, it's almost like you did the dirty work out there to really introduce people when crypto was not as broadly accepted.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that Totally talks about when he's like, make sure you have enough runway for like the real trick to running a startup is surviving.
Yeah,
like
100%.
Things you have good months, you have bad months, you have good cycles and bad cycles, and like if you're properly capitalized, you have the right investors, you have the right partners, you have the right team.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the right idea, like whether it means that, some teams that we've seen that are like the most successful teams on Solana did not start off with their existing business models, they pivoted.
Yeah, 100%.
That's important. If you realize that you're not finding that product market fit or you haven't been able to really give it a go or, somebody else sniped you to it, like it's that ability to both stay dedicated to building, but also like the ability to know when it's time to shift or adjust or, we've been sticking with whiskey and alcohol in theory on the blockchain, but like we have definitely changed pieces of our strategy and things like to accommodate and really align with where the markets are moving, both on the whiskey side and on the crypto side.
Yeah, you definitely have to pivot. It's interesting to see. So like I said, we've had a lot of like institutional talk. We've had a lot of builders on here, and they're all so bullish. Like the way that I frame it is like it's price aside. It's like these big institutions are going to be building so much on chain, and it's like that's how they see their future.
Mm-hmm.
And like the dedication that they have, like the commitment that they have, like and they're a lot of them like we don't expect them to be crypto native or something, but they are, like we've been having great conversations. So the overall sentiment that I've been taking away is like people really like what they're doing. They're going to continue doing it, and they're incredibly bullish. So I that's my takeaway from it.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of like my father-in-law, who worked in advertising and media.
Okay.
But was one of the like earliest adopters of like tech and internet. Like got his computer set up with his modems and stuff. And I mean, he tells us stories that like when he used to stay up late with like, my wife or sister, like his kids, he would surf the entire internet because like there were so few actual IP. You had to type in the IP addresses manually. There weren't like domains. But you could do it. You could literally go to every page on the internet. And
like a new one would come out and everyone would go read that one, right?
Exactly.
Yes,
And so I think of that and I'm like, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. Like there's no way that that's possible, but that's kind of what it feels like. So I think, and then eventually he not even pivoted, but he transformed his media and advertising agency into digital media and advertising. Was one of the first because he had personally, like to your point, in his free time was an internet maxi, believed in this concept. And so I think that's what we're seeing at the institutional level. Like there were a lot of people who may have been engage with crypto protocols or playing around or having fun with NFTs or meme coins or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But they were working at major banks and institutions, and so they couldn't like stand up in a meeting and be like, "I have an idea."
Yeah. It was like a side. It was like a side hustle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was for fun. And then now that like the narratives are shifting and at the institutional level, like the banks themselves and these are realizing that this is actually the future for them to build.
Yeah.
It becomes those guys' time to shine. Like that's where they're like, hey, Malcolm Gladwell's, they've got their 10,000 hours in the trenches.
Yeah.
So they're the perfect person to lead an institution who's like, where do we build here?
Yeah. I think that it's like, all right, like institutions, they're getting a hold of it. But what I think is the most fun still is businesses like yours that really like benefit from crypto, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't think that a product like yours could necessarily be like as successful or as good of a product if it wasn't for crypto, right? Like
and crypto is really helping us to kind of bring that here, and it's important that crypto is the focus of what's happening on today. And I'm gutted that there wasn't a bottle of whiskey on the table for us.
I know. I told you guys I owe you one. It was we spoke in advance, but for compliance purposes with the location, we felt it was better to not bring any of our outside alcohol in.
Fair play.
But drinks on me when you guys come to New York.
Let's play the game, and we can do that Paris-New York arbitrage that we spoke about.
Like we said, exactly. And next year it's in London, so I promise you there will be plenty of Baxus sponsored and co-sponsored events for drinking in London next year.
Perfect. Yes. So the focus now that we want to get into is just the recap of the day. So that was a belter day. We had announcements from all kinds of people. Thomas, let's rip through this as profoundly as we can. What was the biggest announcement from Breakpoint for you?
Overall?
Well, no,
or
from today.
From today. I mean, I don't know. There was a lot going on. I was in the booth most of the day, like yourself. So we might have to reference the sheet.
Yeah, so we've got a nice list up here that the remote team's drafted up for us. Solana Mobile has launched its Builder Grants program. They're offering funding and resources for teams building mobile-first crypto applications on the Solana mobile stack. I think that's critical. That's great for the Seeker's growth itself, and that's going to help kind of expand that Solana dApp store. Cast has opened its business waitlist, offering new access to teams. Cast has done really well with the card for personal users, and so expanding out into a wider net and kind of enabling that business account is fantastic as well. Phantom's going into prediction markets.
Yeah.
How do we feel about that?
I like it. Everyone's going into prediction markets, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't catch the exact. Are they providing a front end similar to what they did with Hyperliquid perps?
I think they're kind of just the routing from someone else and they bring it up to them. It's in partnership with Kalshi, who's doing an incredible job on the
I love Kalshi.
Yeah, so that's starting with you can deposit any Solana token from Sol to USDC. So that's fascinating for Phantom. Parasol is introducing a new ZK-powered perps engine on Solana that enables faster, fairer, and more predictable execution through app-specific block space. Carrot, we love Carrot. Carrot's going into turbo tokens, a new way to take leverage positions across different assets without liquidation risk.
It's kind of like a high-low a little bit, right? Like a token, like a leveraged token.
Yeah, I think that's building off high-low's success.
Yeah.
Next on the list, we have R3 to launch a real-world asset marketplace in Solana in early 2026, aiming to bring traditional financial markets on-chain and enable direct integration with DeFi ecosystems. Raise Network, the team behind a major global gift card system, has selected Solana to power its on-chain gift card and loyalty system.
Is that something that you'd use? I kind of like that idea. I don't know. It seems like an easy way to like give somebody something and like introduce them to crypto a little bit.
Yeah, I think gift cards are great because that's very tangible and that's very, that I don't want to use the word normie friendly, but that kind of gives the chance for someone to get a physical asset that they know, like a bottle of whiskey in a perfect world, and that we can bring them onto Baxus after.
I live in the world of normies, so again, that's exactly, and that excites me. And ultimately, what I think it'll come down to is the UI and the UX. Like that's really what it'll be, because if they can abstract it and it's simply buying, sending, and your gift cards are there, and again, you're getting rewards and tracking. So that's a winner. That's the type of thing where again, most gift cards at this point, anyways, are digital.
Yeah,
they're no longer physical. You're not like going to the whatever it was supermarket checkout and ringing up some gift cards. So that actually that gets me excited.
Yeah, and like the gift card thing makes it very real. It's a lot of people say that the coins go up and value goes up, and it's not until you off ramp that and you use it to tangibly change your life that it becomes actually a real use of value.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, we'll see what happens. But my only thought is, and this is something that I think, just my take, what I think will be interesting is, if this works and gift cards take off, what I think you're going to see is that the gift card model traditionally has been a float model.
Yeah.
Where this company, you buy your gift cards, you're not spending them yet, so they're sitting on your cash and they get to deploy it in other ways. what becomes really, really interesting now is if this actually works, what you're going to see is an on-chain native team who's going to say the same thing, but your gift card balance is going to grow because they're going to take your USDC, they're going to deposit it or stake it, they're going to be earning yield, they'll take some of the yield as their revenue model, and then they're going to deposit some of that yield back to the user. So like when you buy, you know, somebody an iTunes gift card and you buy them an $100 one, but at the end of the year, if they haven't spent it, they've gotten $107, you know, $107 in there. And I think that's where the gift card model and stuff evolves, where if I'm giving you the money, you're going to be able to earn something on it, but there's going to eventually become an expectation that I also am getting something for why am I using your gift card, your stable coin, your, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So
it's a pretty solid business model for them because they, you know, they're giving clients what they want and they're also just generating yield with
100%
themselves. Yeah, very, very solid. Next up, Coppers rolls out Kosh, a new freelancer-focused neobank built on Solana. I worked as a freelancer for a long time, and the kind of crossover between the Web3 world and freelancing is something that no one ever really quite nailed. So excited to see where that goes. BitGet Exchange has launched a DEX, has launched UEX, a new way for its 100 million plus users to trade every Solana token instantly without a listing process.
That's kind of like Coinbase, right?
That's like kind of like Coinbase, and that's huge because the delineation between CeFi and DeFi is kind of one of the big bridges that people don't take. So we're bringing all these tokens on Solana to a much more public-facing user base. Does that trickle down and bring people on-chain down the road, do you think?
I'm gonna, like, unpopular opinion, I like the idea, but I'm a little nervous. I haven't seen what the usage numbers look like from the conversion from the SEX to the DEX, like on the Coinbase as it is, because they do have those types of options. I know in like advanced mode, you're able to do those types of things. Again, I want to see how it's built out and what the user protections are.
Yeah.
Because one of the things I've always said about crypto is like, you know, we had faced the era of extreme overregulation. But if we don't internally regulate ourselves, like we will bring it upon ourselves. Like we will end up being all the things that we don't want regulated, things that shouldn't be, are going to end up getting regulated. So it's a question of like, you know, one of the advantages, so to speak, at least of Coinbase verifying or approving tokens was that like there was some sort of diligence process that Coinbase undertook to actually do that.
Yeah.
We as on-chain and degens and know this, we know that when like there's like you are risking 100% of the money you put into a meme coin that it can get rugged.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure, because like normies have never experienced the vamp. When you buy a token and you hear that your token, and the next morning it's like, this token is up to $1 billion, and you look and it's like, well, it's not your token, it's the token that came right after that has the exact same ticker and the same image.
The worst feeling ever.
Right, exactly. You're like, oh, I own that token. You're like, oh, this was the other one. And so I just want to, that's the only thing is like, I am 100% in favor of like onboarding the masses, getting normies involved, getting these people in. But there's a way to do it in which like we don't expose them to predatory behavior from, you know, some of the bad actors within crypto.
It reminds me of those old Reddit threads where people would say, I bought Dogecoin, it's gone down, how do I get a refund? You know? It's an earmark back to that. Next on the list, we have the Humidify team is seeking to improve liquidity for institutions. They know that spreads on Sol have narrowed from 30 bips to 15 bips and now around 5 bips. We spoke earlier with Ben Covington from Temporal, who's the team running Humidify behind the scenes. Their goal is to start having 8-figure, 9-figure swaps through Sol USD happening on-chain, which would be crazy. Absolutely titanic.
I love that.
Yeah. Flash Trade plans to operate entirely on ephemeral roundlots starting from Q1 2026. As we've said, Flash Trade is really leaning into the RWA angle.
Yeah, they are.
I can't see how this would work. Maybe you've got a different vision. Is there room for whiskey RWAs in a perps environment, or is that just too ridiculously complicated to think about?
No, so we've behind the scenes spoken to a couple of teams that are working on like, you know, some of them on Solana, obviously, some of them using other chains or other protocols, who are working on this idea of RWA perps. But ultimately, there's a couple of factors that I get nervous about. It's the same thing that gets me nervous about perps in general. Like one of the biggest risks I find to the DeFi ecosystem, not just Solana, but all of DeFi, is we are rehypothecating the same volatile collateral over and over.
Yeah.
So when you have a depegging on an exchange that was then used as collateral for other people to like that causes the cascading liquidations. So the example I always give is the way that PaxG on October 10th depegged on Binance. So if you were using gold as your collateral and that gold was still redeemable for $4,200 on Monday, like redemptions through PaxG, where it was trading, but it drops, on-chain liquidity drops it down to $3,200, $2,800. All of your other positions got liquidated, even though you had a very stable source of collateral. And so where I get what's interesting about RWAs, but it also really depends on how they build their oracles and their indices. because the advantage is that there's so much high volume trading on crypto that we have Oracle pricing. We're able to do that. We know where the gaps are and we see it. And especially with like getting down to 5 bips like of spread over there, being able to have slippage, like that's huge. If you do a perps, let's say on a specific watch, right? Like a specific model of watch, how frequently are you updating? Because you see this in auctions, like this happens in traditional auctions where when you're dealing with something that is a little bit fungible, there's 50 of these watches that were made, you start to see a lot of duplicitous behavior of shill bidding to drive up the price because you've cornered the supply or vice versa. And so
once it sells at that
right,
level,
that's
your whole bag is up.
Exactly. Like all you have to do is drive one. It's like when we saw this even with NFTs where guys would try and spread them out across all the wallets and then bid them up because then everyone starts rushing in and you're able to basically liquidate your entire bag.
Yeah.
And so what makes me nervous, and again, I'm excited for it. I want there to be whiskey perps and wine perps and these types of things, but you need a really, really well assembled index that you're trading, not a specific one asset kind of one-to-one in the way that you are with crypto. You're not trading a basket, you're trading a specific token. And B, you need a really sophisticated model for your Oracle because otherwise you're going to get rogue wicks all the time because it's like, who is the source of truth for the reporting? Is it an auction house? When you're doing the auction house, are you using the hammer price or are you including the amount of fees that the buyer's paying on top of it? Are you factoring in the taxes? That's really where I think it's going to become super interesting. And if they're using on-chain data, which again would be wonderful, I mean, we say this with Baxus, we have a great amount of volume, but there isn't, there's still that possibility for the manipulation over there. So it's really like, how does your Oracle update? Who are your sources of truth? If that can be solved, then forget it. Like we're off to the races and you will really begin to see institutions be able to now enter the market and trade RWAs because they'll have perps as hedges, not for the sake of pure speculation like we do with like, oh, I want 50x leverage on Bitcoin. But I have a Bitcoin position, and so in order to hedge the downside, I'm going to use perps instead of options. So that's where I think you're going to see like a good perp, like for RWAs, well assembled, will be game changing for crypto because you also like that means that you'll start seeing whiskey or watches or wine or real estate use this on-chain collateral because it doesn't run the same risks of cascading liquidations. However you do it, titles, apartments, bottles of whiskey are not affected by a depegging or a massive sell-off in Bitcoin, and that becomes like a really interesting, more stability for your collateral.
And despite being a liquid market because it's whiskey, it is still a very illiquid and inefficient market. So there's just so much volatility that can happen behind the scenes. With that in mind, would you have to, if you wanted to take a whiskey perps platform, would that just be relegated to being an index of the whiskey market as a whole?
So I think you'd be able to do different types. You'd be able to do, let's say by type, like a bourbon index market. You'd be able to do, Scotch, bourbon, whatever. You'd be able to do regional. You'd be able to do, if you want to go bourbon route, like by mash bill or distillery, like across different like brands. But ultimately, I think the best thing to do, and you'd have to figure out what exactly this is. You'd have to fit it like the same way that you have the S&P 500, which adds and removes companies all the time. You'd have to have an actively monitored index that is evaluating and assessing, like, is this a leading or lagging indicator of the market? Because there is always outliers. And I just think that becomes really important to the fitting of the model. I don't think you need one that's the total aggregate of every single thing because there are types of products or types, that don't sell well or drop below price because they were not priced properly to begin with. We see this with tokens all the time. Like tokens and whiskey really have a lot in common. And the similarities of how the launch strategies go have a lot in common. And RWAs in general, watches, et cetera, like Rolex leaves money on the table in the secondary market because they actually realize that they need the secondary market to make sure that nothing sits on the shelf. If people don't think that, then they're not going to sell the models that nobody wants because you buy those because you think you're going to get the model that you could flip for money. Too many tokens are launching at way too high FTVs, which means that there is no perception of, oh my God, how high could this go? Because you're like, is this really going to go 2, 3, 5, 10, 100x? And then the only way is down. So then people just start selling it off because and there's no unlock. There's no like, well, I bought this and I'm going to lose money, but then I'm going to get the better token. Oh, the only person who's really kind of effectively done that a little bit now is Coinbase, where they're like, if you dump your monad like pre-commit, then you're not going to get access to future tokens. And if those tokens
social credit scores,
right, exactly. But if those keep getting better and better, then like you're actually not going to want to sell. So they actually could have developed like a hodl method in the same way that like again watch companies have done, where it's like if we see that somebody else registers your watch, you're taken off the list, you're not going to get that thing. Again, part of the issue with individual companies in crypto is they only have one token. So if you launch it and you price it too high from the beginning, again, it's so hard to convince people that things are moving in the right direction or that it has room to run.
It's a great analysis. Next up on the list, big breakpoint announcements. Neodyme Research reveals that Squads protocol holds the highest amount of funds locked among all Solana smart contracts. That's insane to me because Squads is their name for everyone who's a builder, but outside of that bucket, no one really is that familiar with Squads and what they do. You know, they run so much multi-sigs for teams across the ecosystem. They've got a great wallet. So the fact that Squads is actually holding the highest TVL amongst all smart contracts to me is fantastic.
It's awesome. They're like OG Solana project, and like they made multi-sig wallets usable. Like I don't know if you guys ever used any other ones, but I used a Bitcoin one back in the day, and like getting one transaction through took, I don't know, like 20 minutes or so.
Yep.
I think Squads is an excellent product.
They're the founders, the team. They're really like truly like one of my favorite teams on Solana. To your point, that they're not one of the best known. I think that's the best part. Like people don't realize like when they talk, oh, it's infra, it's this. I'm like, right, but infra isn't. Again, like you've got different RPC providers, you've got these things that are competing. The infra is there is one company that is so good. Their product is so good. Like we use Squads, like that's like through our like processing and stuff. Like we have it integrated across different stack. I use Fuse Wallet.
Yeah,
Fuse is fantastic.
Fuse is the
it's a bank. It's better than a bank.
I onboarded I'm like, okay, I want to get my wife onto crypto. She's not going to sit here and remember seed phrase it. Got her onto Fuse. She's looking at her dollar, like the dollar value. I can send her USDC.
Yeah.
Incredible. Like they have a card product, which again, draws down from your Fuse balance. Altitude, Baxus started using Altitude, their business product. And that's the idea is that like, the reason they have the highest TVL is because Fuse on the back end is Squads.
Yeah.
Altitude on the back end is Squads. They built a piece of infrastructure that it's not worth any other company. Every other neobank that's going to build on Solana, 90% chance, if not higher, they're going to use Squads on the back end because they built such a phenomenal product. So to hear that, like, I don't know what you want to say. They're the Swift of Solana.
Yeah.
Like, sure, that's where all the volume and transactions go because again, we can argue about Swift and traditional banking, but as far as traditional banks go, it works. It gets the money from where it is to where it's supposed to be, and Squads does that for security. Again, I'm happy to hear that. I'm really proud of them for having done it. And they're just a crack team. Like
everyone who's building anything on Solana loves Squads. I think they're quite well universally respected. For sure.
Yeah.
The other announcement, ironically, we just had this one in here. Oro launches staked gold and rolls out a new global gold digital redemption network. He was touching on that. They're trying to expand out to different third parties in different countries to enable that gold redemption network. That's awesome. That's really like expanding the TAM of crypto, and that's kind of also bringing the gold world on chain, which is huge.
Yeah, I love what he's doing. I wish we could have given him a lot more time to allow him to talk about that, but I mean. That's great.
Usman.
Yeah.
I love him. I angeled into Oro. First of all, I'm like gold, liquid gold, but like, again, I'm so bullish on RWAs and even traditional assets. Like the trading of gold right now, I'll call it semi-efficient or pretty efficient as far as markets go. You could trade it on indexes, stock markets, like your commodities markets. It's pretty easy to get access to. But the fact that there really is, and like there is a gold lending market, there's a way to earn yield on gold, which no one else has access to unless you understand how that works, how that really people bound. That he's giving you a really easy crypto token that will give you access to the yield and the compounding yield on gold in the way that it's an LST but for gold. Like you don't have to worry about your crypto values, and that gets me incredibly excited. And his when he was telling me the vision of this of like a decentralized network for redemptions, where again, as long as it's like pure certified gold, like it has that element of fungibility. I don't mind if I drop it off here and I pick it up there. And what makes it so exciting to me is that is the I'm a nerd. That is the origin of banking. You would deposit your valuable stuff in one country and you would get a letter of credit that the bank would verify that if you went to a new location, you showed up, when you went from Venice to London, that they would honor the credit from the thing that you deposited your gold there. And so the fact that he's built this digitally and is doing that where I can drop off my gold in one country, have my tokens, which is my proof of ownership, and go and redeem it somewhere else. And those guys know that it's stored securely in a vault and that they'll get settlement. And the entire time while it's being lent out, whether it's to jewelers who needed to be able to do things, whether it's traders, whether it's nation states that are trying to build up their gold reserves, that you're now earning yield in that. Like we talk about stablecoin yield, and I'm like, yeah, but I can get yield, it's not as good, but I get yield, when I put money into a CD in my account, like in my bank account. I have no way of getting yield on gold, and like I want to own it. So again, what he's building is so cool. I love it, and again, it speaks to like the power of Solana and like on-chain. That's a perfect example of another asset that you could not build not on blockchain, like similar to what you were saying about Baxus.
Yeah.
This is what this enables. Like there's a lot of stuff that I think we're going to see people trying things, but like when you find eventually those specific assets or those specific markets that have existed for hundreds or thousands of years, and then you realize that like, okay, they broke down because of technology, or like that became the breakdown. And so we're now using new technology to bring it back to effectively, call it a barter system.
Yeah.
I love it. I think that's awesome.
Something I'm noticing is that amongst the RWA clients, there's very much a sense of wag me, and there's none of this PvP attitude that you might see in more DeFi-centric circles who are competing for that same market weight, that same user base. So I love the eyes outwards, looking at expansion rather than infighting from you guys, Baxus, or everyone on the RWA side of Solana.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. I mean, I love to hear it. I want to see more of it.
I say this all the time. Like there was a Emporium, which was doing like the vending machines for trading cards. Like we were their vaulting partner because we were like, listen, we have this lockdown. We can happily easy enough for us to help you with this. Like we have the vaults already set up. They were just getting started in testing, and we're like, we'll do this before if you choose to pivot or choose to do this instead of having to go sign a Brings contract or whatever. And it genuinely is that the more that because it's twofold for us, we target we educate an on-chain user base so they eventually come and realize the value. But our target initial market, our go-to-market strategy is whiskey people, wine people, spirits people. It's not the on-chain economy. And I think that's the cool thing about the RWAs and why we're all so excited is it's almost very funny to us is that all the DeFi protocols, or the vast majority, to your point, they're all fighting for the same user base.
Yeah.
We're here and we have, as much as we're saying we're onboarding this, the institutions are coming, their clients are only going to interact with crypto and blockchain through the institutions. They're not handing their clients a DEX and saying, do me a favor, instead of us managing your portfolio and charging fees, go trade meme coins like for yourself. They're not going to do that.
Yeah.
What you will have though is individuals who are like, I want gold and I'm going to be able to buy it from Oro on chain. I like the idea of earning yield. I want to buy whiskey. And so what we've been able to do, the RWA community, is actually onboard net new users who will then eventually realize the benefits of these other products, or we will eventually be able to integrate them into our products with a very user-friendly front end so that they don't realize that they're using DeFi, and DeFi protocols are now getting better yield for their users because they're interacting with RWA. Credit card charge 30% interest.
Yeah. It's a real brilliant end result. That is unfortunately all we have time for. We are going to wrap it up. Thomas, I'm going to throw it back to you to hype us up for tomorrow for the final day of the SolanaFloor live stream.
Yeah, that was day 2. I mean, big day 2 for us too.
Massive day 2.
Thank you so much for joining us here. Check out Baxus, everybody. I'm having a ton of fun. I hope that you guys are as well. I hope that the viewers are having a good time too. And thank you guys so much for joining in. This is Solana Floor, and we are live from Abu Dhabi. And this is Solana Breakpoint 2025. Thank you guys so much.
And we'll be